having fun and enjoying your power as a neurodivergent individual. I have a really cool guest for you today. You all are going to love it. Perry and I ran into each other. I'm not even really sure exactly how that worked from the magic of social media. And we have a great connection. So his bio is in the show notes, but I think what's most important is that Perry has brought himself into this magical, amazing place through tons of hard work to really bring attention to the neurodivergent community, to the possibilities, and to creating a sense of belonging for people who maybe don't feel like they belong anywhere. I really respect Perry and his work, and I've asked him to come on the show on Someone Gets Me today for a reason, and that is to talk about it, talk about being neurodivergent and ways to have it work in your favor rather than seeing it as a disability or a hindrance. So, Perry, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. What an intro. Wow. I like that.
Thank you. And where I want to start a little bit is if you could give everybody kind of like a Cliff Note version of how did your work, the Octopus Movement and all the other work you're doing, how did it get birthed? How did it show up and emerge through you in the beginning? What happened?
Something happened. Maybe it's my midlife crisis that happened. I was always the weirdo. I was always the crazy one, the misfit, and the rebel a little bit. I was always doing things differently. And that was just me. I never thought about it. It was just what it was.
Mhm.
Sometimes very difficult, very challenging, sometimes a lot of fun, and a lot of people were enjoying to be in my company because I always had crazy stories, and I left the Netherlands to live in China with my wife and kids, and I did crazy things, and I sold a TV format in Hong Kong to one of the biggest production companies, to start a TV show as a taxi driver in China. Crazy things, right? But then at the age of 44, I think that's, yeah, 44, I'm now 47. Someone sent me an article about creative generalists. So I was reading that. I was like, yeah, that's me, right? And I was in contact with a good friend of mine in Brussels, Erin Meyer. And she said, well, we in the States have a name for that. It's called multipotentiality. You have to check it out. It's a TED Talk. So I saw Emily Wapnick's TED Talk
Yes.
about multipotentialites. And I thought, oh, that's fascinating. That's a bit like me. Not 100%, but I could relate to that. Multiple passions, learning very fast, adapting yourself very fast. So I started interviewing multipotentialites. And this was just before the pandemic. Then the pandemic hit. Everybody was on Zoom. So doing these kind of interviews was very easy. Everybody was available and everybody all of a sudden had a Zoom account. I love that. So I was interviewing people like crazy, all these multipotentialites. I went to LinkedIn, find a multipotentialite, checked out their profile, thinking, oh, that's an interesting person. I'm going to interview this person. And I went from Bangladesh to South Africa, all over the world, just behind my laptop. And after 70 interviews, I discovered something. I forgot about my own neurodiversity. I have ADHD and dyslexia, severe dyslexia, really. Me and my writing. It's funny from time to time. And I was interviewing all these people, and I thought, after 70 interviews or something like that, so it took me a long time to discover this, I wasn't paying attention. Most of the people had neurodiversity. So being wired differently creates this kind of multipotentialite output, creates an output that is very fascinating, fast learning, making connections, out of the box thinking. That's the result of being wired in a different way. That's how it all started. I thought it was so fascinating. And I went to the Netherlands, I went to Philips organization. I said, can I have an MRI machine, please? And they looked at me like, are you kidding me? But I wanted to do research. How is someone's brain wired differently? And why is it as a result that it's easier for you to come up with solutions, to solve problems, to make these connections? Why do we learn faster? Why do we see more things? Still want to know that. And that's the start of the Octopus Movement. To make a very long story short, after interviewing so many people, they all said, well, if the world would only understand me a little bit better, I could do so much more. And I thought, you know what? Let's do it. Let's make it happen.
And the
And I will
Octopus
stop.
Movement was born.
And the Octopus Movement was born. It's almost 2 years ago. In March, it will be 2 years. Just Perry behind his laptop. Now, around 2,300 members in 58 countries. We have a global network of ambassadors, founding members. We have a board of inspiration. We have art projects. We teach at schools. We're launching an app. We're doing crazy stuff, all with nonlinear thinkers, because that's how I call it. I don't call it neurodivergent people, because not everybody has neurodiversity or knows that they have neurodiversity. So I call it nonlinear thinking.
Yes, I love that you call it nonlinear thinking, because most of my clients that come to me are nonlinear thinker, visionary people who don't fit in or outside of all the boxes. And they don't relate to any of the words because they don't either understand, or they think it's a elitist thing, or there's all kinds of like energy around it. And so they're quietly hurting or feeling separate from, or like they don't belong, because the language is limiting enough that it kind of stops them. And so I want to hear what you have to think about this idea that I say to my people. I say, well, I think our brain, our cognitive brain, wants us to think that everybody is the same to make it easier. But the truth is, nobody's the same. So the truth is, on a neurological level, and there's more nerves than just in our brains, we're all diverse. No two of us are the same. And then when you add our autobiography and how we've lived or what we've gone through, good, bad, and indifferent, all of those things, it stands to reason that no two people are the same. There's lots of similarities, yet we're all neurodiverse when you really come down to it. And the language sometimes I think is very limiting. And so what's your experience with that? Do you see that kind of thing where it's much bigger than the language lets us see?
Oh,
Or
yeah, I sometimes have a debate about it. I also say, well, everybody, isn't this, if you look at the word neurodiversity, isn't diversity meaning that it's all different? So why do we have a group of normal, and then you have neurodiverse people, and they have a label? If you think about it from a language point of view, it's really weird. So we call ourselves divergent, and that means not standard. So the standard brain is 80%, and then we have 20 or 30% neurodivergent. That's weird. That's very weird. That's why, I'm not against labels. I think labels can really help us to understand our own thinking. So understanding my own ADHD, or my own, maybe I do have a form of autism. Maybe I'm on the spectrum somewhere. Some people even say that everybody's on the spectrum somewhere. It's just finding out where you are, right?
right.
I bring it back also to education. I think when we're born, we're all nonlinear thinkers. We're great kids. We're very creative. Everything is possible. And then we go to school, and the educational system is very linear. So this is how it works. And if it fits you well, then you do well. If it doesn't fit you well, you have a big struggle. You struggle a lot.
Mm.
And I think there is also something that is very interesting, that some people cannot stay in that linear way of thinking. Their brain is wired differently, that they understand linear thinking. They went to school, got their diploma or not, or just didn't finish. But in the end, were able to do all these linear things, but can help themselves to also be out of these boxes constantly. Does it make you weird? Yes. For 80% of the people, yes, we're weird, because they've trained themselves to be in that box. And this is also something I believe, that every time something becomes complicated, we want to simplify in order to understand. So diversity and people and thinking is very complicated. So how do we handle that as normal people? We simplify and we put it in boxes. So we simplify neurodiversity as well, and it freaks the hell out of me. And I find it discrimination. You have ADHD, you fit in the box of ADHD. That's it. We can label you now, and we know what to expect, and everything is fine. It's BS. I don't believe that. It's not
Yeah,
true. Maybe we should stop boxing everything.
I totally agree with you. And you're talking, and I'm like, yes. I said I excelled in school because I could adapt to the linear way, but yet there was this whole other part of me that was the creative nonlinear self, and I kept walking around when I was younger, especially going, nobody understands me, because they thought I was in the box of, you're smart, you can do the linear things, you can do science, you can do math, and blah, blah, blah. But they didn't see any of the rest of it. And
No.
and there was always that separation and that difference. And I find that in a lot of the people that I work with, and just in people I meet in general, it's like we can get in the box, like you have ADHD, and then there's nothing else more to you, when that's not true.
No, it's not true. And it's nice to understand, if you have ADHD, to label some things in your own thinking, to understand where is this coming from, my behavior or my difficulty to do something. Is it me? Am I stupid? My God, I've always thought my entire life that I was really stupid. I wasn't able to be successful. I wasn't able to deliver on the expectations of others. Why? Because I couldn't follow that linear line. I just can't. I want to. I cannot be 100% in that linear line. It's impossible for me to do that.
Yes. So how is it that you are navigating creating this movement and keeping it going as it's expanding, when so many people believe that then it has to be in this linear strategy way, when you are so nonlinear and creative and amazing? Like, how do you balance or moderate all the different expectations that come toward you, or that are on you with this movement, while being nonlinear and so creative? How does that work?
Well, I think it works because I don't struggle with the linear world anymore. I used to be in fight with that because I wasn't happy with myself. Now that sounds really like a huge cliche, but I was trying to fulfill the expectations I had, and I wasn't able to do that. And I was blaming the linear world, the
Mm.
outside world.
Mhm.
Now I understand that I don't have to blame this outside world. This is just how my brain is wired. This is who I am. This is how I function. This makes me Perry. And maybe I just have to embrace it and make the best out of it and allow myself to do all the things I want to do in my way. And by doing that, sometimes I meet a lot of people that are very nonlinear or multipotentialite, and they say, well, I'm doing so many different things and I'm not finishing anything. I would say, for me, that feels like you're compensating. If you have a nonlinear brain, you love to create new ideas because that makes you feel good. And you need to feel good every day because you're doing something that doesn't belong to yourself. You're still adjusting to that linear world, which is not you. So are trying to compensate by creating constantly new ideas and going into new ventures and whatnot. But I think if you understand yourself a little bit better and you're at ease that you're different and you can let go, then you don't have to fight that system anymore. So in my work as a founder of a global movement, I do use linear thinking a lot. You should know all the systems that I use, the Excel sheets and the databases and the apps, and I have all kinds of systems in place. It's very linear. But within this world that I created with the Octopus Movement, I can be myself. I can create new projects. I can do new things. And I also learned something very important. I'm not listening to advice of linear thinkers. I don't. So when a linear thinker has advice for me, I thank that person a lot and I just continue. Because linear thinkers don't understand my way of thinking. So I'm being a true rebel and very stubborn most of the time. I just follow my gut feeling and go for it.
Right.
And if it feels good for me, I'm doing it. And I'm not listening to accountants or lawyers saying this, you should do this, you should do that. I hear them. Maybe I do something with it. But I tend to listen more to people that are also very non-linear, like artists, and then listen to how they operate and inspire me. And I find that very, very interesting. And I tend to listen more to those kind of people. At those two things, so allowing myself to be who I am, so I don't have to fight the linear system, and just I don't care what other people say anymore. That really helped me to do what I'm doing.
Right? It gives you that level of internal freedom. But I think you make a really important point that it's a yes and, that just because you're a nonlinear thinker doesn't mean that the linear world is evil and bad and can never be gone to. It's not the extremes like a lot of people try to do. It's yes and. Like, I can be a nonlinear thinker and totally use all the systems and dive into the linear things that need to happen and the strategies and things, and still remain my nonlinear self within that. And I think so many people get caught in that either or, when I really believe it's a yes and you just confirmed that for me. It's yes. The answer is yes.
For me, it's the North and the South Pole. It's very simple. We need them both, right?
Yes.
And I wrote a manifesto for the Octopus Movement, and I'm also writing the solution isn't on Mars; it's here on planet Earth, in creating a balance between linear and nonlinear thinking, allowing corporate organizations to embrace these linear and nonlinear thinkers into their company, and think about other things than just shareholders' value and go in a straight line into as much money as possible. Money is fine, but it cannot be all very linear. It's not from this world. So many things are happening so fast today. We cannot stay in that linear train ride or whatever you want to see it. It's not possible.
No, it's not. And I think the people who had the nonlinear ability through history kind of had to hide it a little bit. And then they, like Einstein and Steve Jobs and people like that, and Richard Branson, they're all nonlinear, but they don't
Yeah.
talk about it that way, or didn't, because it wasn't accepted or understood. And now I think bringing voice to it and faces to it help everybody see that, first of all, it's not evil. And second of all, everybody can come together for a really beautiful equilibrium and balance, instead of it being so heavily weighted, like you said, like on these train tracks, just going toward a single outcome. There's much more going on here.
I'm really a sucker for documentaries. I love documentaries and reading books. I was just today watching a documentary about Sinead O'Connor, very nonlinear, right?
Very.
Shaved her head. Like, I'm a beautiful woman, but I shaved my head. Why? Just because I wanted to do that, right? It's very interesting documentary. And I was thinking, I made a list of very, very inspiring nonlinear thinkers on the website. There's a whole list there. How does it work? As soon as they have reached a massive linear result, then the world embraces these kind of people and then they celebrate their nonlinear thinking.
Yes.
But before that, it's a huge struggle because the linear world is very judgmental to these kind of people. They see it all wrong. They misbehave. It's ridiculous what they're saying, until something huge happens. They
Yes.
become either very successful. Look at Steve Jobs, right? Everybody knows his story. He got kicked out of Apple. He was, and now he's, in retrospective, he's always the example.
Mhm.
We're always talking about him. But when he was, I don't know what age, but he was fighting, and it is his vision for Apple, for Macintosh computers. Most people, I saw an interview on a press release, and a journalist was interviewing Steve Jobs and giving him really a difficult time. This is all ridiculous what you're doing, and it's all wrong. And look at his story now. And that happens a lot with nonlinear thinkers. People
Yes.
don't get it until the linear results get there, and then they embrace their nonlinear thinking. And maybe we should talk about this all together and start embracing a little bit earlier to make things happen.
I think it would bring a synergy that would have positive results happen much sooner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm positive. And especially in education, especially with kids. We all know these stories, how linear education is, and your kid is struggling at school, being misunderstood, is brilliant on the one hand, but finds studying at school very difficult, but finds studying in its own time with its own interests. They're brilliant. Something is going wrong. We're missing out on something. And we need that in order to save humanity, to do something good in the world. It's not going so well. So we need that. We need these creative, innovative brains to make a difference.
You're right. It is not going well. We should probably reevaluate that linearness. And I keep thinking back to the Industrial Revolution where everything became machine-like. And I think that it's time that we wake up that maybe that trance wasn't all it was meant to be. I think it was overgeneralized into humans, not just machines. And it's time that all parts of us get honored.
And I think I'm very excited about this year because I think it's happening already with AI. I think AI is directly linked into that linear world. Mm-hmm. And we found the perfect solution for the over-specialized linear world, and that's AI. And in order to use AI very well, you need to have a nonlinear brain. Otherwise, you keep going in the same circle, and you don't want that. So true creativity and true artists are very nonlinear, and they will use AI to really go forward. And people that are still very linear, they will use AI and stay in that same little circle, and then are out of a job, and then they're complaining, and then it's the fault of AI, and then horrible things happen. But if we want to move forward, and everybody wants to move forward always. So I think there's going to be a big shift from the linear single specialist to the nonlinear multiple specialist using AI tools to do massive things.
That's great. Because I keep thinking the people I know who are afraid of AI when I'm sitting here reflecting as you're speaking tend to be more specialist people. And
of course.
And I'm like, oh yes. I think that's
I spoke to someone recently and he said, Perry, it's not fair. Then people write with AI. That's not writing. Writing should be by a human being. And I was just in the car and I was listening to music of Sinead O'Connor because I saw the documentary and I want to listen to all her music. And I'm like, oh, cool. And there was this new album from her, new single. And there was this DJ mixing all kinds of stuff. And I just launched a new series of ink. It's an ink drawing of an octopus, and I write a story with it, and I share it once a week. And I was thinking about some background music during the story, so I was checking out all these sounds.
Right.
I was thinking that's the same thing in the music industry when the drum computer came and mixing all kinds of music sounds that were electronic. Then also a lot of people were saying, no, that's not real music. You need to create the music, be behind the piano to create the music. Being a DJ you're not a musician when you're a DJ. We think differently now. And I think using AI is like being a DJ. It's combining all these different elements together and be very creative and put your own flavor on top of that. Also with writing text, you can use AI, you use some of your own, and the idea behind it is still your own idea. You cannot say to AI, just write me anything. That's going to be very boring.
Right. And it's a yes and again. And I think that
yes.
if you could learn how to have the yes and embrace in neurodivergence and creation and all of it, then pretty soon you start seeing the real magic of what each unique person brings to the table if they just would allow it to show up.
Can I say something about that? Because
yes.
you're saying something very interesting, the yes and. I noticed that I'm a bit irritated on social media when I read about neurodiversity. And I'm struggling to figure out what it is. I think it is because what I see as a hype today about neurodiversity is very linear.
Yes.
We are neurodivergent specialists. We train your company how to deal with neurodivergent people. You should hire 6 people with autism. And it's so linear. And we keep going back to that system thinking, like we have all learned at school. And I'm figuring out why I'm so irritated by that. Maybe because it's too boxed, it's too linear. And I don't want to talk about someone with autism. Why are we talking about someone with this label? Why are we not just being diverse in all ways and find the right people to do the job how you want to work with people? And if that means there are people with autism or ADHD or whatever, I love working with people, with neurodivergent people. You know, we understand each other very fast. We think in a different way. It's very creative. It's very interesting. It goes much faster than anything else. But am I going to say I only want to hire people with neurodiversity? It's it's not from today. That's my feeling. I get annoyed by that. Do you understand what I mean by that?
I
Yeah.
totally understand what you mean by that. And I share that annoyance. And I'm in the world where I speak to gifted people and in conferences and things like that. And I notice that a lot of well-meaning people who specialize in neurodivergency are still applying the specialist way to do it. And it really is very annoying to me. And it's upsetting because I'm like, by the definition of the word diversity, we even started there, right? By that definition, we're all diverse. And so when you start saying, well, we have to have a certain number here, or you're taking something that is beautiful and global and magical and amazing and distilling it down to a railroad track and a few words. And it's more than that.
Yeah.
And I think that people who are now specializing in neurodiversity, which I see it all the time, are still missing the point. They're missing the boat. Now it's a step closer to the boat, but they are not on the dock yet, even.
No.
And I that's why I wanted you to be on the show with me, because I know that from our interactions, we're like-minded that way, that we see something more than what our linear industrialized world wants to make it.
I sometimes say, as long as we use the word diversity, diversity doesn't exist.
Yes.
Because I don't know if that makes sense, but I always think about that. As long as we call it diversity, we categorize, I can't pronounce it today. We keep putting that in boxes
Right.
in order to understand, and that's why we use the word diversity. But what happens if we remove the word diversity? Then we allow everything to be as it is.
And that's the healthy, that to me, that's the healthy outcome, is everybody being in their right and perfect place for whatever their passion and skills and understanding and way of thinking are. And then that collective comes together for something more amazing, whatever that project might be or the goal might be. And, like diversity, some people think it only means race diversity or sexual identity diversity or socioeconomic diversity. And now you got the neurodiversity. And the answer is it's all of that and more. But the moment, like you say, that we label it, we just undid the very thing we think we're doing.
And I especially have that with neurodiversity.
Yes. Yes.
If you start labeling that, that's the core center of creating all ideas. If you start labeling that, then what is the output? Then the output is labeled in every way. It's so difficult. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we agree.
Yes, we do. And so if you're listening to Perry and I and you're going, yes, 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 check out the show notes and go join the Octopus Movement and follow him and be part of this movement, because it brings me joy and enlightenment every single day in all different kinds of ways. I am so glad that we've connected. And I just wanted to put an extra plug for your things, because I really love what you're putting into the world and the people that are part of the Octopus Movement too. So now the personal question. I would love for you to share a little bit, if you're willing, about um, how you embrace and bring into your family setting the whole idea of being neurodiverse without all the linear parts that go with it, with your family, your children, and how how is it, like, in a functional way, serving you?
That's such a good question. How to illustrate the energy that's going on in my household. I have 3 kids. I'm a single dad with 3 kids. We all have neurodiversity. All my kids have, and I have. Mom, I divorced with mom. Mom is very linear, I think. Um, so how does it work in our household? It creates a lot of space. That's it. I had
Mhm.
to think about your question. How does it work? It creates a lot of space. It creates a lot of space in my own thinking, allowing myself to be weird, to be myself, and to take away these expectations that are not created by myself, but that I gave myself thanks to my teachers and my parents and everybody else. My parents did an amazing job, but still they give you these expectations that are not completely yours. And I think in my household that's very nonlinear, that is embracing the nonlinear, the neurodivergent thinking, is a very, very safe and open space. My kids always say that I'm very strict. I'm very clear. So the boundaries are there. So it's
Mhm.
not a crazy hippie house. Boundaries are there. It's very clear. But in between, everything is possible. Everything is possible to say, to share, and also to share your emotions and to feel whatever that's happening.
Mhm.
And nothing is weird in that sense. So it's very open. It's very it's very relaxed. And at one point my son came home. He's now 17. This was a year ago. And he had a girl in class and she was struggling with her own family. And he said to me, can we, you know, can she come on holiday with us? She wasn't his girlfriend, but he just wanted to give her the experience of that open space. And he said, I think she needs that. I think she needs to be able to breathe and to be exactly who she is. And I think that's what's happening in my household. And I'm very proud of that and I'm enjoying that every day. It's really cool. Yeah.
That's really beautiful. So the boundaries have set up the container
Mhm.
that allow for your children and you to flourish and be yourselves and engage and interact. But yet it's not so squishy that it's just this random chaos. There's a structure that is lovingly embraces all of you. That's kind of what I imagine, like this big loving embrace around all of you, having your amazing life, so much so that your own children want to let other people experience it too.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, that's like the biggest testament to the strategy and how
And
it
now,
works.
but now it sounds like everything is so easy. It's not, um, because we struggle with the day-to-day life. My kids are teenagers, so they struggle with their hormones and expectations in school, and there's this world. Sometimes I feel that we created some kind of bubble, and that we have our own bubble, and there's the outside world. And I'm always very careful with that. That's not what we're just creating, because then it's not reality. I don't want to create it a bubble, and in that bubble everything is nice and safe, and outside it's very tough and very linear. Even so, for 3 years I don't have any income, so money wise I decided to go to a very free way of thinking. Before I started the Octopus Movement I lost everything, and I did a hard reset. I was even homeless for 7 months, and I said, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to be so non-linear that I don't want to be stuck on that path of I need to have this income, otherwise I cannot pay my mortgage and all the bills, and still I need to take care of my kids. I need to make sure food is on the table. But there are other ways, right? And thanks to the Octopus Movement, we get donations and it's possible to eat. Is there a lot of space financially? No. but it's always and. It's the North and the South Pole, right?
Yes.
And that
Right.
kind of freedom also allowed us to create something of our own that is untouchable,
Mhm.
and that's beautiful.
Right. There's a beauty in that essence of it. And so it's
Yeah.
to me, when you're talking, I just keep imagining like a safe zone. Like the world might be a little chaotic or crazy or linear or whatever it is, and we still have our home base, our safe zone, and we can go out into the world and have that experience and bring it home or not. And it allows for that permission to be in the world and in our own safe zone and honor all of it, all of it for what it brings us.
And the safe zone to say, I'm not okay.
Right.
It doesn't
Right.
feel good.
Right.
It's not going well.
Mhm.
Even that I'm supposed to be doing well right now because tomorrow I have an exam, but I'm not doing well today, or I don't want to talk about this because it doesn't feel right. Or again, it's very open.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's inspiring. And I hope that all the listeners really pay attention to that, because I think sometimes parents struggle with how to help their neurodivergent kids live in that space and honor that space and know that there's still an outside world that's, there's still that rub between the strategist and the linear and the nonlinear, and thinking still people think it's A or B, and that's not even it, but there's so much
Yeah.
more.
Yeah. Because as a parent, what do? You want to prepare your kids for a happy, safe rest of your life.
Mhm.
That's what we want to achieve, right? Because maybe we didn't have it ourselves. I think that happens a lot.
Mhm.
So we didn't have a very happy life, and now we have kids. We want to make sure that these kids get a happy life. And we're transferring our trauma also with our DNA to our kids, and
Yes.
we're recreating everything again. While you can also, but you have to work on yourself as a parent first. You need to understand your own thinking. What helped for me, I went rock bottom. I lost everything. So my biggest fear became reality, and I discovered that I'm still alive. I even became very sick 10 years ago with a brain infection. I almost died in the hospital. I'm still alive. So even when you're very sick, or when you lose everything, or everything goes against you, I'm still alive, and I can still enjoy life, and I can still be responsible for my kids. So if even the worst things happen, we're still okay. That makes all the other stuff so much easier
Yes.
than when you're being bullied at school. Okay, we can just allow it to be there and talk about it, and share about it, and discuss and give it some space, rather than immediately fight it, and this is wrong, it should be away, and take action, and be angry yourself. And no, it's maybe a very strange example. I don't know why I'm saying this, but this is how I feel in explaining it right now, and
Mhm.
this really helps my household. If my kids are very happy with me, I don't know. I will come back in 10 years, Diane, and let's talk about it again.
Okay.
Maybe they will say, maybe they're all traumatized and say, my crazy hippie Dan had it all wrong. That's also possible. But I don't believe so. I think it's going well.
And we'll see as they get older what really happens. But
Exactly.
I think it is beautiful, and your awareness and your understanding and your flexibility and your nonlinearness makes it possible.
Recently, my 15-year-old son came home, and he has dyspraxia. That means his fine motor skills are not there. His handwriting is worse than your doctor's. And he came home and he said to me, Dad, I think I also have ADHD, and I think I'm also on the spectrum of autism. I said, why do you say that? He said, well, the friends that I like the most are friends with autism, so we have some weirdness in common. I say things that are very unexpected for a lot of people. I see things that other people don't see, and he's 15,
Right.
he's a teenager and he's talking about it like that. Sorry. Makes me very, very proud.
Yes. Oh, that's beautiful. That's totally beautiful. I would just say, look at him and say, well, he's gifted. He's got all these
Yeah.
amazing gifted qualities that come together in his beautiful essence.
Mm-hmm.
How cool is that?
Exactly. Yeah.
So I want to be attentive to your time because I could talk to you like for hours. And is there anything that you wanted to share today that we have not talked about or not mentioned that's on your heart so that you can feel complete?
One more thing that really helped me is the awareness of the unwritten rules.
Mm-hmm.
That really helped me a lot with everything. To be aware of the fact that we have a lot of unwritten rules in this world, in our lives. And we don't always know all the unwritten rules. And the silly thing is that especially people who created these unwritten rules expect you to understand these unwritten rules. And if you don't accept, if you don't know them or you don't act towards them, they're judgmental about it to yourself. And just be aware of these unwritten rules. Also, maybe the unwritten rules you create yourself. It's very interesting to think about the unwritten rules in life. And going back to the kids, I always say nothing really exists except nature. We talk about numbers. It's a set of rules that created numbers and math and exact, etc. So does it really exist? And it's fascinating to think and have a philosophy around the unwritten rules. What kind of rules are they? Are they really there? How do we need to address them? Are we aware of those unwritten rules, and how do we act upon these unwritten rules? I find it always fascinating to think about. So I wanted to share that
Oh,
in
I'm
light
really
of
glad you
everything you
did.
spoke.
I was thinking about unwritten rules when it comes to color and vibration. And like we say, the sky is blue, but that's an unwritten rule. Who said that? And it's a different vibration. And we could call it another thing collectively. And in all of those circulating rules, I'm glad you brought that up because I think that's very, very important. So I have two final questions for you that I love to hear what people say. And the first one is, what is the most memorable food you've ever eaten? In all of your travels and all of your world, the most memorable food?
Well, the first thing that pops up in my mind is China. I lived in China, and I think the Chinese cuisine is the best in the world. Sorry, all French people listening. The French cuisine is wonderful. It's definitely number two. I lived in Brussels, very close to France. I went to France every other week. Family-in-law was in France, so I get it. But the Chinese cuisine, just it was something very special. And I think the fried eggplant in China was my all-time favorite. They do something with that eggplant that is so fantastic that you can create a vegetable so tasteful. I just love it. Fried eggplant from China.
That makes me hungry. And the last question for you today is, if we were going to put a billboard up that the whole world was going to see with Perry's statement, your message to the world that everyone's going to see, what would that message be?
Allow your nonlinear thinking. Maybe that's boring at this point, but that's the core center of everything. If you allow yourself, forget about the unwritten rules, forget about how you should write or how you should interact. If you just can let your nonlinear thinking just flow and do how you want it and just do it and don't overthink, amazing things will happen. And I think people will be less judgmental and people will be so much more impassioned and so much more loving and caring towards others if we just follow that unwritten non-linear gut feeling and just do it.
Oh, I love
That's what I believe. Yeah.
that. Is beautiful. Well, Perry, I want to thank you for being on the show today with me and being part of Someone Gets Me and just sharing your life with the world. And I'm so glad that we are in each other's orbit.
Me
So thank you.
too, Diane. Thank you so much for being at your show. It was a real honor to be here, and keep doing your amazing work. It's awesome.
Oh, thank you so much. So remember, everybody, put your face to the sun so the shadows fall behind you because you're a rock star. You're here on purpose with a purpose. So go out there and allow your nonlinear thinking to emerge into something even more beautiful than you can imagine today. Until the next episode, if Someone Gets Me, be well.